So welcome back to Science versus Conspiracy over coffee. I'm your co-host, Conspiracy.
And I'm Science. Hello, it's been a while.
Yeah, you've been on assignment for a number of weeks now.
Did y'all miss me?
Of course we did.
Aw, you have to say that. We're in the same room.
We're in the same room.
You have to say that.
And we're married. As you know, this week it was the 58th anniversary of the Kennedy assassination on Tuesday.
11/22/63.
Correct.
Do you know how I remember that date?
How do you remember that date?
Not because it's the Kennedy assassination per se, but because it's the title of a Stephen King book that he wrote about it, which I still want to read. Didn't we give that to your dad? No,
I don't think so.
That's how I remember the date.
Right. And incidentally, the day after the assassination is Doctor Who Day, the first episode of Doctor Who in 1963.
That's cool.
Yeah. November 23rd, 1963.
Cool. Brilliant.
Brilliant.
Fantastic.
Except all that didn't come for about another 50 years. Since it was 58 years since the assassination, I thought we would do an episode on the assassination and not focusing on who shot JFK, but more of the famous footage that was captured by Abraham Zapruder. Was the Zapruder film faked? Okay.
So, because a lot of people talk about the shooting being faked, and, you know, the lone gunman theory, all that kind of stuff. So now this is specifically about the film.
This is about the film and the circumstances surrounding its creation, I guess.
Okay.
Brew some coffee, pull up a chair, and open your mind. This week, Science versus Conspiracy will be looking at the Zapruder film. Was it faked, or at least intentionally shot? We'll be right back and dive right in. Because what a lot of people may or may not know is that there's a whole lot of coincidences, weird connections between key people involved, and just stuff that is just really too coincidental to be just to be a coincidence.
Okay. Now, is that just confirmation bias, though, where you find things because you're going looking for them?
Okay, so let me just give you a quick overview, an example, and I'll let you kind of decide.
Okay.
Okay. As you know, let's go into the assumption right now that Lee Harvey Oswald shot Kennedy.
Okay.
Okay? Because that's what the powers that be, whatever, that's what they wanted us to lead us to believe, that Lee Harvey Oswald was the lone gunman who shot Kennedy.
Okay.
Okay.
I thought the lone gunmen were actually Byers, Langley, and Frohickey.
Yes. They are the lone gunmen. They're the only lone gunmen because there wasn't really a lone gunman in this.
Okay.
There's this guy, George de Mohrenschildt, who's kind of at the center of this whole link between everybody.
Okay.
So years ago, he met Jackie Kennedy's mother and met Jackie Kennedy when she was like 6 or 7 years old. And George and her mom became really close friends.
Okay, was this at a party or something?
Well, I think it was, they first met at a party. Mm-hmm. But then they became close friends, close family friends. So she knew George fairly well.
Okay, so how did he meet Lee? Does anybody ever just call him Lee? Or is it always Lee Harvey Oswald?
It's always Lee Harvey Oswald.
Colin Robinson.
Yes.
If you guys don't get that, you got to go watch What We Do in the Shadows. So Lee Harvey Oswald.
Lee Harvey Oswald.
I'm just going to call him Lee.
Okay, Lee.
Yeah.
I think it's been long enough we can call him Lee, maybe. So getting back on track here. So in 1962, a Dallas CIA operative by the name of J. Walton Moore was friends with George, and he suggested that he meet Lee Harvey Oswald in Fort Worth. Now, Lee Harvey Oswald had just lost his job in Fort Worth, and George suggested that he could find some work in Dallas. George had heard of Lee Harvey Oswald and his wife Marina because of a Russian-speaking immigration group in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. George was born in Belarus in the Russian Empire in 1911.
Okay.
He immigrated to the United States in 1939. He testified later that he was collecting information for France to outbid the Germans on the American oil production.
Okay.
Now, apparently, George H.W. Bush was first introduced to George through his roommate at the Phillips Academy. Bush's roommate was George's nephew. And George H.W. Bush somehow became involved with Lee Harvey Oswald and his wife through a Russian-English translator.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Okay. George de Mohrenschildt, his wife, he had many wives, but his one wife actually worked across the street of the school book depository in the Daltex building, which is across the street in Daley Plaza from the school book depository. Okay.
Okay.
And she worked at a fashion designer owned by Abraham Zapruder.
Okay. All right. I'm starting to see the connections.
Yep.
But when you say that he had many wives, was this simultaneously?
No.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
No. Because I guess he was a bit of a womanizer.
Inquiring minds need to know.
Yeah. Right. So at the time, his wife was working with
Zapruder's wife.
No, Zapruder.
With Zapruder.
Because he had a company called Jenny Jr. And it was like a dress it was a dress company.
Okay.
And they made stuff out of the Texas Daltex
Textiles.
Yeah.
Fabric.
It was basically known as the textile building of Texas, of Dallas.
Okay.
Okay.
That's a mouthful.
It's a mouthful.
Holy cow. Texas Textiles, Daltech.
So you're starting to see some of these connections that are they're coincidences, or
is it just because there's small town? I mean it's not that small, but like, what was the population of Dallas in 1963?
It was a small but not small town. It was around 680,000 people.
Oh yeah, that's still enough that you don't necessarily know everybody. You
Exactly.
know, like it's still, that's significant.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right. So you also have to consider where some of these people were coming from, because George W. Bush, even though he denied it his whole life, even though there's declassified documents showing and proving that he was actually in Dallas working for the CIA in 1963, he always denied being part of the CIA until he became director in the late 70s.
That's interesting, by the way, because like you don't just become director.
Yeah, exactly.
If you haven't been like, conspiracy theories aside, that's just common sense. Right?
Yeah, he was supposedly recruited at a high school. So when he went to Yale in Skull and Bones, he became a Skull and Bones member, which his father, Prescott Bush, was also a member of at Yale. So he was kind of tapped. And the CIA wasn't necessarily around when he joined, but the OSS was around, which was the precursor to the CIA.
And what's OSS stand for?
Yeah, the Office of Strategic Services.
Oh, okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, so that was like the precursor to the CIA.
Okay.
He would have been a part of that prior to joining the CIA as the director.
Right.
There's actual photos of George Bush in Dallas. There's even reports that he met with Richard Nixon at the time.
Oh, wow.
In Dallas in 1963.
Okay.
So you're starting to see this connection of players coming in, right? After the assassination happened, I'm just going to jump ahead for a second.
Yeah.
Because we're going to just...
we've hardly talked about Zapruder,
Yeah.
so sorry.
Yeah, so I want to just mention about the Dallas, or the Daltech building.
Okay.
It was across the street, but some independent studies of the assassination, of where some of the shots were reportedly coming from. The Deltec building, the fourth floor, which was the floor that their office was on, or their studio was on, according to the trajectory of some of the bullets and everything, that's where some believe that the shots came from. The second shot, I believe, came from the fourth floor of the Deltex building, across the street from the book depository where Lee Harvey Oswald was supposedly held up with his gun.
So they're saying it came from across the street instead. Some of these reports.
Some of the studies, yes.
Okay. Interesting.
So my question and theory, I guess, is, given the connection with all these people, between all these people, these groups, the Zapruder film is like the photographic evidence of the assassination. It shows them coming down the street, the shot, and Jackie jumping out of the car, and like the whole bit.
Right.
Was Abraham Zapruder recruited to stand where he was standing and shoot what he was shooting?
As in the film.
As in the film.
JFK.
Not JFK.
We're not claiming he shot JFK.
No, but he was he there to create this record to help prove the lone gunman theory. However, like, having said that, though, at a key moment, JFK goes behind one of the road signs where you can't actually see one of the shots. And there's also frames missing from the official Zapruder film.
Okay, hold on. Back up. Okay, so talk to me about the road sign and you can't see the shots. What do you mean by that? What's happening there?
Abraham Zapruder is tracking the motorcade with his camera, coming down the street, and there's like a street sign, like a big road sign blocking the frame, and you can't see any. Obviously, it's obstructing the view of the motorcade. That's when one of the shots were fired.
Well, that's timing.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So when I say they, as in law enforcement of some kind, they got the film. In the official one that was released, there's frames missing.
Okay, and so how do we know there are frames missing?
Because they're sequential. They're numbered.
Okay.
On the film. And there's jumps and everything, and again, it's a 16 millimeter film, and it's not the smoothest HD, Ultra HD that we have today.
Right.
So it's not as clear, but there's still pieces missing.
And is there photographic evidence that the numbered frames are missing? Like, has somebody seen this film rolled out and see that it goes, for example, from 5 to 7 and 6 is missing, kind of thing? Or
I think so.
How do we? Okay.
Yeah, because they've also released a version that shows the sprockets on the side of the film. They've included that in the film, so you can see the sprockets going by.
Okay.
Along with each frame.
Okay. Yeah.
And there's pieces missing.
Yeah, because those wouldn't line up. And for those of you who are too young to have used, 35 millimeter even, or anything like that, there's like he was saying, the little sprockets that hook in and get spun. So that's interesting. Okay.
So there's 6 frames from 2 different parts of the film were accidentally damaged. Okay. Yeah.
And thus were spliced out? Is
yes.
that, or?
Yeah, because it's Life magazine apparently bought the original one, but then it was sold and acquired by by the government
Yeah.
and everything.
You can imagine they'd want their hands on that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's really the only evidence of video evidence of the assassination. So highly sought after.
Yeah, I would think so. So this film then, because of where he was standing and because of his connections and all the little kind of, I want to say incestuous, but they weren't incestuous, but just like really close relationships that had been formed with all these people. And so is it because of those people are saying there's just too many coincidences?
Yes.
For it to have been just like, ooh, I happened to get this on film?
Yes.
But does it make the shooting any less credible?
I guess where this theory is going is that obviously JFK was assassinated, but it's a matter of who did it. It's a whodunit.
It's a whodunit and why, right? 'Cause
Exactly.
whoever shoots him, they're going to have different motives.
They're going to have different motives,
Yeah.
and some of these motives have involved the CIA because some of the motives have been from both the CIA and the Bay of Pigs incident months prior, because John F. Kennedy disapproved of what the CIA was doing, and he called it off at the last minute.
Yeah.
So they were upset about that. The mob was supposedly involved somehow. It's funny because right after the assassination, the news organizations almost immediately start talking about some sort of conspiracy.
Really?
Yeah. And like far right extremist groups in Dallas at the time were kind of like the first ones to be blamed for it.
And why? Like, what were the conspiracies at the time as to why? Was it because of the Bay of Pigs or?
Yeah, just politics. Like he was on the left and
Yeah.
the other guys are on the right, and military and all that kind of stuff. And they didn't really like what Kennedy was trying to do for segregation and
what he stood for and all that.
Yeah, and all these little things, depending on what you wanted to focus on, that's who was involved. And
so there were lots of conspiracies already right away.
Yeah. And then when Lee Harvey Oswald was shot in the parking garage 2 days later, that just stirred up even more stuff because as you see in movies all the time, they're trying to clean up the mess.
Yeah, right.
And nobody can talk.
Yep.
If they're dead.
Yep.
And to a lot of people, that's what Lee Harvey Oswald was. Like, he assassinated the president and then they shot him so he wouldn't talk.
Right. About who paid him,
Who
what
paid
his
him.
motives were, who contacted him, all that kind
Exactly.
of stuff. Assuming that if you buy into the theory that he wasn't just a psycho and did it of his own volition, right?
Right. And that's what the Warren Commission concluded in 1964, was that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. Nobody else coerced him into doing it.
And he did it because
He wanted Castro. He was a communist.
Okay,
and
right.
He had this communist agenda. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Going back to George Mohrenschildt, he died in 1977
Okay.
to an apparent gunshot wound to the head.
Okay. Suicide? Is that what
That's what they say.
Okay, that's what they claimed?
That's what they claimed.
Okay.
But in his address book was the name George H.W. Bush, in brackets, Poppy.
Poppy.
So do you know what Poppy is in relation to George H.W. Bush?
No, I don't. Didn't we just see that on a show? Oh, wait, it was in Enola Holmes. Okay, never mind. Poppy had significance in Enola Holmes. If you guys are interested in watching Enola Holmes, it's a light, fluffy, fun movie. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, Poppy was supposedly George H.W. Bush's CIA handle.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay. So how would anybody who wasn't in the CIA know that?
Correct.
And so has there ever been any talk or evidence that George de Mohrenschildt was part of the CIA then?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was supposedly like Oswald's handler in Dallas.
Okay.
So he was recruited by the CIA at some point.
Okay.
George was recruited by the CIA at some point.
And we're not talking about Bush, the other guy.
The other guy. And so he answered to George Bush, Senior, H.W. Bush. And that was kind of the chain of command, I guess, in Dallas.
Okay.
And so he was, George was Lee Harvey Oswald's handler, and getting him the job, befriending him and his wife, and then with George setting up his wife in the befriending Abraham Zapruder and being business partners and working that way, and kind of everything starting to come together. Plus knowing Jackie Kennedy for a number of years. Like since she was a little girl.
Yeah. So
did Jackie have anything to do with it too? Like, did she know what was coming because she was aware of her husband's extramarital activities?
Right.
Especially with Marilyn.
Right.
Marilyn Monroe, that is.
Yeah.
And others. Now, okay, so just going to put that on pause for a second.
Okay.
Because, but that still ties in with Abraham Zapruder, his connection to this whole thing, because he could have still been that plant to record what was happening, so that there wouldn't be any question that Oswald was the lone assassin.
Right.
And he was positioned at the right place at the right time, because there was a few other people on the ground that day that authorities have never been able to locate. Like you've heard about the Umbrella Man.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's this mysterious figure in black in a suit. He had an umbrella, and just before the assassination, he put up the umbrella. So was that kind of all things are go signal?
It was a signal.
And then there's this woman who's standing on the roadside. Everybody else is jumping, ducking down, running for cover, and she's just standing there watching everything happen. So was she also, it's hard to see from the photograph, but it looks like she's holding something. So is she also documenting something going on, like what was going on?
Huh. Okay.
And they haven't been able to locate her either.
That's wild.
It's like these two people just completely disappeared.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess the three of them together, one, Abraham Zapruder with the kind of the official record of it, and then maybe the other two, or at least the woman, recording it from an alternate perspective for the powers that be that set this in motion. And then the Umbrella Man giving the signal to go, that all things are go.
So, taking it back to the whole thing about the film.
Mm-hmm.
So we're thinking then that the whole film was staged.
Well, it's not staged. It was.
I mean, the film was real.
Yeah.
But like the setup.
The setup was staged.
Even coming down to where he stood to have the street sign in the way.
Yes.
All of that was like set perfectly to cover up the fact that if I'm hearing you right, that to cover up everything, because the CIA are probably the ones who orchestrated Lee Harvey Oswald, poor Lee, to assassinate JFK on their behalf. But there was also maybe a second shot.
Well, there was a number of shooters, from what I've over the years have been able to find.
Right.
Oswald not being one of them.
Yeah.
Because he was arrested for assaulting a police officer, and then he ran into a theater, and that's where he was apprehended for the assault of the police officer. And then
did he shoot Lincoln?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
In the theater.
Time traveled back.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he wasn't even originally arrested for the murder of the president. It was only after that they kind of pieced things together that they charged him with the murder. But what I think happened, Oswald realized at some point that he was actually being set up for the murder.
Okay.
And he panicked and went back to his house, and then left, assaulted the officer, and then was trying to hide out and lay low at the theater. But because he was being handled, they knew exactly where to find him.
Wow.
Because he was being tracked.
Yeah.
So they found him fairly quickly, and then he was taken care of fairly quickly 2 days later.
Wow.
But I don't think he pulled the trigger. He wasn't up in the window with the rifle or anything like that. But he was made to look like he was the guy that was involved, and he panicked and fled. But the Zapruder film made it appear that there was only one shot from the book depository. And Abraham Zapruder, being working in the building across the street, he would have had access, and if he met somebody out on the lawn the days prior or whatever, being coached on what to do, nobody would think twice, because he could have just in Daly Plaza, people often gathered there, and
sure.
So nobody would think twice of him meeting somebody and having a conversation with people in front of the building. And he'd have just easy access to the building because obviously he worked there.
Absolutely. That's wild.
Yeah. There's obviously a ton of more information that we can get into, and we'll probably eventually do another episode on going into more detail about Lee Harvey Oswald. And
yeah, because we talked a lot about Lee, even though this was the focus was meant to be about the Zapruder film, but we kind of have to talk about the other stuff because it's all part of it.
It all ties in.
But there's still so much more we could get into for sure.
Yeah. We'll leave it there for today's episode, and we'll throw it out to you guys. What do you guys think? Did Abraham Zapruder have prior knowledge to what was going to happen, or maybe not even knowledge of what was the assassination, but was he told to stand where he was told to stand, where he was standing, and to film it?
It's fascinating stuff. Yeah. Let us know, folks. What do you think?
All right. So that's it for this week. I am Conspiracy, and we'll see you next week. And being paranoid is smart.
Thanks again for listening, and I'm Science, and don't forget to stay curious, but rely on the facts.
This week's episode of Science vs. Conspiracy over coffee was produced by Lithologica. Research and writing was done by Bob Homer and Jennifer Timer.